This report from America deals with a problem that exists in every corner of the world: water. For centuries, scientists of many lands have fought to win one of man's oldest struggles against nature. As yet, no solution is perfected. This report, we show two nations, Mexico and the United States, merging their efforts in a common cause and an ancient quest.
De Veracruz vengo hasta aquí, linda jarocha, cantarte mi son. Boga marinero, boga ya, se perdió de vista el malecón. Pero en el anzuelo de tu amor quedó mi corazón. El pescador se hizo a la mar, llevando en su alma una triste ilusión. Contento va porque al remar piensa en su amada que en tierra dejó. Boga marinero, boga ya, se perdió de vista el malecón. Traigo guachinango, cómprelo, pulpo fresquecito y camarón. Pero en el anzuelo de tu amor quedó mi corazón.
Nature made a good harbor at Puerto Peñasco, Mexico. 30 years ago, fishermen from farther south discovered this harbor near the richest shrimp beds in the Gulf of California. They brought their families and established a town. Most of the founding fathers still come in with the fleet each day at sunset. The shrimping is so prosperous in these waters that a young man like Oscar Palacios already has 3 boats bought with his own earnings. The shrimp have built Puerto Peñasco. The shrimp provide income for 7,000 people and support a bank, 3 movie theaters, a hotel, a hospital, and a city hall. The future looks good for Puerto Peñasco, except for one thing. Puerto Peñasco is a parched town. In hundreds of villages like this one, rain is a rare event. While food is inexpensive in Puerto Peñasco, water is not. This land is part of a desert that stretches eastward for 500 miles, and north and south is far. Peñascans want plant in their front yards, but nature doesn't. Water to supply the needs of 7,000 people is brought in from one town well, 18 miles out in the desert. Its taste is questionable. Its purity variable. years, the town doctors have worked to get people to cover their barrels, to boil the water before drinking it. But word of mouth is slow. Old habits cling. Like the doctor, Gerardo Portugal worries about water. He is in the water business and wishes he weren't. Mr. Portugal manages the town's ice company. The company's main business is making ice for the shrimp boats. 10 years ago, the town's old well went dry. The ice company had to start sharing its water. Puerto Peñasco uses 100,000 gallons of water a day. The orders come into Mr. Portugal's office, and he distributes them to independent truckers.
Manuel Araiza. Leandro Salazar. René Pineda.
12 truck owners operate the water run. 700,000 gallons a week to be delivered to 2,000 different homes. Each man makes 5 or 6 trips daily. It's hot work and hard work keeping the lifeline to the well open. The caravan heads for the desert. Out at the well, the early crews are already loading up. People are waiting. Trucks are waiting. With 3 million gallons a month to move, speed is important. Other wells could be dug out here among the cactus. Some. The town has had the area surveyed for water many times, but the few possible well sites found are farther from town, deeper, more expensive to reach, saltier. Trouble starts when the pump stops. They've had this news before, too often. The blowing sand of the desert is hard on machinery. Miles of desert to travel with a load of water. Bad news. They go together in this kind of country. to Puerto Peñasco. When the pump breaks down, the trucks have to head 50 miles across the desert to the next well. When the trucks have to travel 50 miles, the price of water doubles. A few miles to the north, this same desert runs into the United States, where Americans are struggling with the same set of problems. On 5 other continents, the problem is repeated. 2/3 of the people in the world are worried about water. When Dr. Gracita came here 7 years ago, a dozen children died every summer of waterborne diseases. Education has brought child mortality down, but not far enough. The diseases are still around, and a few children will die of them this summer. The pump is broken. Serious words for Peñascans. When will it be repaired? Maybe tomorrow. Maybe the day after. When the pump breaks, water lies longer in the barrels and bacteria multiply. This is the time of maximum danger. The feel of trouble is in the air. Bad news travels fast. Worry that is always just beneath the surface of Peñasco now emerges. Man cannot drink seawater as it is. Human tissues can't assimilate water with salt dissolved in it. It bloats the body, chokes the glands, poisons the blood. But there are ways to make it drinkable. Greek sailors knew the way 10 centuries B.C. Heat salt water, catch the steam, condense it, and you have fresh water. They knew the formula in Homer's time. Aristotle was the first to put it down in a scientific treatise. The date, 350 B.C. Julius Caesar knew the formula. He used it for his thirsty legions on the desert coast of North Africa. But when it came to supplying a city, Caesar's engineers met the same problems water engineers have run into ever since. Caesar had to go to the hills for fresh water and bring it to his cities through miles of aqueducts. 10 centuries later, the Turks were masters of the art of distillation. But Constantinople, surrounded on 3 sides by salt water, couldn't get a supply of drinking water out of it. The Turks had to bring water from far inland and build vast underground reservoirs to store it. Through the centuries, men in every country tried their hand at distillation. In 1952, the United States government started to work on the water problem. A federal law created the Office of Saline Water. Small experiments developed into large desalting plants. Their goal, to raise the output of water, to lower the staggering costs. In Freeport, Texas, falling film evaporation is the key to 1 million gallons of fresh water a day. In Roswell, New Mexico, Aristotle's formula, plus vapor compression, unlocks fresh water from brackish inland wells. In Webster, South Dakota, They are taking the salt out of water by using electricity to drive it through a membrane. At the Wrightsville Beach Research and Development Center in North Carolina, many new methods are being tested. The United States will work with any nation on one condition: no secrecy. Discoveries must be free for all to use. Private industry built many of these plants, partner of the government in the search for a major breakthrough. Will the breakthrough be in classic distillation? The chemical crystal process? Using atomic energy for a fuel supply? International teams have them all under study. In the whole water program, there's only one partner who fails to cooperate: nature. As man triumphs over each obstacle, nature throws another in his path. Hardest of all, the ravages of seawater on everything man-made. That's what the Harbor Island Lab is working on. Caesar's water engineers in 48 BC complained that mineral deposit clogged the pipes. It still does. Run seawater through a metal pipe. Corrosion and scale will soon destroy its usefulness. If the cost of desalting is high, replacing corroded and scaly equipment accounts for much of it. Industrial scientists here were testing the effects of seawater, sea spray, and sea air on metal and wood 30 years ago. Long before these things became an official concern of government, the Harbor Island Lab began basic research on corrosion problems. To distill seawater, you heat it. Experiments show that heating the water vastly increases its destructive powers. Water moves at high speed through a distillation plant. The lab tested water moving 100 feet a second. Their finding? High-velocity salt water delivers the most savage attack of all. Problems. The desalters had them BC, and they've still got them. The difference? Today, for the first time, men have a united front in the struggle for water. Meanwhile, the deserts of the world wait. 2/3 of the world waits, with its wells getting lower and its population higher. Along with government and industry, American universities are partners in the struggle for water. The University of Arizona is one of many American universities that have research grants to seek the solution. Heat salt water, catch the vapor, condense it. Aristotle's recipe with some new hardware. Using the sun's heat to distill water isn't new. But Carl Hodges, University of Arizona physicist, is experimenting on a way to streamline the process. In the Hodges solar still, a film of seawater runs through plastic trays slowly, so the sun has time to heat it. The hot salt water is pumped to the top of a tower. As it falls, air blows upward, evaporating 8% of it. This vapor, rising to the top, is conducted to the next tower, where it strikes cooled metal fins and condenses into water again. Fresh water. Next step for Carl Hodges. Try the experiment on a bigger scale and see if the principle still works. A solar still must be close to the sea. It should be in a place that has hot sun all year round and a community with a real water need. Puerto Peñasco offered all of these. Allies are gathering. Mexico's University of Sonora offers its help. It will give land to the plant and personnel. A water plant is many things to Peñasco. To the inspector of fishery, more water means more ice for the shrimp boats. A bigger fleet going out at sunset every day.
Me da mucho gusto enterarme del programa que se trae para la planta.
To the doctor, a water plant means healthy children. Where? When? How? Talk is of tactics and strategy in the struggle with nature. The Puerto Peñasco desalting plant. Production. Gallons of drinkable water from the sea. For big cities, the solar still is not the answer. It covers too much land to use where real estate is costly. But on a desert coast, many acres of dry land for a little water is a fair exchange. Mr. and Mrs. Carl Hodges, commuters. Twice a month they make the dusty round trip across 220 miles of desert from the United States. They have two homes now. The one on this end is a trailer. There is a frontier somewhere between the Hodges' two homes, but no one seems to think about it much. So many people in so many countries are working together for water. Nationality becomes a detail of no importance. Officially, this plant is an experiment, producing 3,000 gallons a day of surplus government property, which cannot be sold. It can, however, be given away. The Puerto Peñasco Hospital sends its truck every day. The Peñasco plant is only an experiment. It's too soon to estimate the contribution it will make to the water problem. But the experiment seems to be working.
El funcionamiento de las torres está tomando temperaturas de entrada y salida de agua, tanto en el evaporador como en el condensador.
Ajá. ¿Y qué tal cuántos efectos tenemos ahorita?
Ahorita parece que va a 8.
Oh, God. Fine, working with basically. Now.
The two universities, Sonora and Arizona, pool their knowledge here as naturally as they exchange their languages.
40.1%, 49. Looks pretty good. Looks like we're updating text on it.
Yes, I think this is improving every day.
There's statistics right now.
On the digital printout machine, performance figures from all over the plant are reported and studied. Production continues to increase.
Continues to use the solar energy 8 times, we'll be in business. Looks very good to me. All right.
On a Saturday night in Puerto Peñasco are the same as always, but the talk now has new horizons. When Webster, South Dakota, 2,000 miles away, reports more gallons per day, Peñascans are interested. A new device working out in Freeport, Texas, rates a toast here on the Gulf of California. Last year, Peñascans had never heard of Wrightsville Beach, North Carolina. Now they share word of Wrightsville with new meaning. Desalting is far from a success yet. You can tell Peñaskans it will be years before we get the quantities of water we need. You can tell them the costs are still far too high to be practical. You can tell them the world's water shortage is still a crucial problem. But somehow, like people in Webster, Freeport, and Wrightsville, they are optimistic.
The problem of desalination is not yet solved for the world. Enough water for world irrigation or industry is years in the future. But somehow one day scientists will break the mystique of nature, and their efforts will have meaning for the world. This is Michael Wager in Puerto Peñasco.